Today is February 7th, 2022. My name is Sylvia Scoggin. I am interviewing Illinois State Senator Karina Villa, who was also the former Illinois State House of Representative for the Latino Oral History Project and Voices of the Pandemic at the Center for Latino and Latin American Studies at Northern Illinois University. This project is in partnership with the Voices of Oral History Center at the University of Texas in Austin. Please know that Senator Villa, that this is an interview will be placed in the Northern Illinois University Library and shared with the Voices Oral History Center at the University of Texas in Austin. And if there's anything you do not wish to answer or talk about, I will honor your wishes. And also, if there's something you want to talk about, please bring it up while we talk. Because we're not conducting this interview in person, I need to record you consenting. So I'll ask you a series of questions. Please say yes, I agree, or no, I don't agree. There are several questions you need to make sure you agree. So first one is, the Center for Latino and Latin American Studies wishes to achieve your interview along with any other photographs and other documentation at the Northern Illinois University Library. And Northern Illinois University Library will retain copyright of the interview and any other materials you donate to the Center for Latino and Latin American Studies at Northern Illinois University. Do you give the Center for Latino and Latin American Studies consent to archive your interview and your materials at the Northern Illinois University Library?
Yes.
Do you grant Northern Illinois University Library the right, title, and interest in copyright over the interview and any materials provided?
Yes.
Do you agree to allow Northern Illinois University Libraries to post this interview on the internet where it may be viewed by people around the world?
Yes.
Do you grant the Center for Latino and Latin American Studies consent to share your interview and your materials with the Voices Oral History Center at the University of Texas, Austin, for inclusion in the Voices of Pandemic Oral History mini project, which will include posting an interview on the internet?
Yes.
Okay, one more. Two more. Do you wish for us to share the rest of your pre-interview in your public file available to researchers at the Benson and NIU libraries?
Yes.
On occasion, the Center for Latino and Latin American Studies and Voices Pandemic Project receive requests from journalists who wish to contact our interview subjects. We only deal with legitimate news outlets. Do you give us consent to share your information for journalists to contact you? Okay. I think that's it, right? Okay. So, we could start here. So, if you could start with, like, your name, your birthday, if you want to share, and your place of birth.
Sure. So my name is Karina Villa, and my date of birth is September 19th, 1978. I was born in Illinois and have lived in West Chicago for the entirety of my life.
Do you mind sharing your parents' names and where they were born?
Sure. So my mom is Maria Emma Villa, but maiden name was Hernandez. She was born in Michoacan. The biggest city close to where she was born is called Sinapecuaro, but her hometown is called Bocaneo. And my father, his name is Jose Antonio Villa, and he was born in Durango, Mexico. The closest city to where he was born was Santa Maria del Oro, and his town is called San Vicente.
Okay. Do you have any siblings?
I have one older brother, and his name is Antonio Villa.
Okay. Where did you grow up, or how did you grow up? Or, like, what was your childhood like?
Yeah, I actually grew up here in West Chicago. I grew up in the unincorporated part of West Chicago, and that area was predominantly Caucasian when I was growing up. So the elementary school, the elementary school that I went to and that I attended was Indian Old School in West Chicago. And at the time, that elementary school actually was, like I said, predominantly Caucasian. It was just an interesting experience, because as I was growing up and going to school in my elementary school years, I was also attending church here in town, and I would attend church and Sunday school with the Spanish Mass. So I would be really, on the weekends, would be very exposed to other Latinos, predominantly Mexican immigrants. And a large part of my family actually lived right here in West Chicago, both my maternal and paternal side. So my maternal grandparents lived in town. I had a lot of aunts and uncles and cousins. So it was just a very well-rounded, I think, experience growing up. As I got to middle school, back then it was called the West Chicago Junior High. It was not called a middle school. But when I was at the junior high, was kind of like the first time academically that I was in a school setting with other Latinos. So that was just a curious transition for me. I remember how it just sometimes felt like I was a little bit of a fish out of water. But I did have 2 years of that experience before heading into the high school. So I graduated from community high school, West Chicago Community High School, in 1996. But those 4 years that I was there really helped to grow who I was as an individual. Around that time when I was, I think, maybe a freshman, or maybe it was 8th grade, my parents opened their first small business in town. And so I started working at our grocery store. We had a Mexican grocery store in town, and started working there and getting to know the community in a different way. We really were a place where people came and sought any kind of assistance, from translating documents for people. I remember on a few occasions helping people in terms of accessing medical resources or help. Also going with families to help them register their children to school, because they were just unfamiliar with the American education system. So all of those things really helped mold who I am today, all of those different experiences.
You talked about your school. Did you do any like extracurricular activities or sports or anything in school?
Yes, actually, I was on the swim team. I was on the swim team from the time I was in elementary school through the end of my high school time. I really loved being on the swim team, not because I was that particularly amazing at it, but because of the camaraderie and the friendships that I developed while I was on the swim team. The other thing I did was band. I, again, wasn't necessarily the best ever, but loved participating, loved marching band. One of the curious things about that is that both of those activities, again, were not predominantly Latino. So a lot of the friendships that I developed in those spaces were with folks who weren't Latino. I only mention this to say, because I think that a lot of times when people think of West Chicago and this area that I live in, a lot of people think that it's a predominantly Latino area, which it is today. But my youth and growing up was definitely a blended experience that I had.
Awesome. Did you go to college? And if you did, where did you go? And what did you major?
I did. So, I actually graduated early from high school, a semester early, and I went to go to live in Mexico, because my dad's dream had always been that, one of us, my brother or myself, would end up going back to Mexico and studying there, going to school in Mexico. That was just really one of the things that he really, really wanted. So I graduated early and I went to Mexico to live for a few months, went to school there, actually really was able to improve my Spanish while I was there. had tutoring to help out with that, and was able to experience what life was like down there, more so than just like on the summer vacations that I used to take. So, but really, I did not feel like it was the right fit for me. I went to go stay in a town where my father is from, close to where my dad is from, and still very macho, very male-dominated society with a lot of the customs and cultures that come with that. And so, that was my teenage years in which I was extremely loud and opinionated in regards to what I believed a woman's role was. And so it just didn't mesh well. So I did end up coming back. And in those months, I remember the months before leaving, and then when I came back, it was interesting because my high school counselor really didn't speak much to me about college, didn't really give me much guidance, and truly the only place that my high school counselor talked to me about was the College of DuPage, which was the community college that I did end up going to. I only bring that up because, it almost felt as though he didn't believe that I would really amount to much. It kind of felt like he didn't think that I had the ability to do more. And that's not to say anything negative about community colleges, because I'm very thankful for my experience there. It's just that really that was the only option that he gave me. So I did end up going to the College of DuPage for 2 years, which was, again, like I mentioned, an experience that I was very grateful for. I made some friendships there that I still have to this day. Some of my best friends came from those years. I participated in the Latino Ethnic Awareness Association and ended up being the president of the group while I was there. And that really brought more awareness to what I already understood to be the Latino experience, specifically in DuPage County. DuPage County is one of the wealthiest counties in the United States. And so having grown up in DuPage County, but yet in one of the poorest cities within the county, really brings an interesting perspective, I think. And so after I finished the College of DuPage, I went on to National Louis University to get my bachelor's degree in human services and psychology. I think probably early on in my second year, I made the decision that I was going to get a master's in social work. So I applied and was accepted to Aurora University. One of the reasons, in fact, that I applied for Aurora University is because they did not require test scores to get in. I have never been a good test taker. Still am not a good test taker. But I knew that was the profession that I wanted to pick. So I definitely understand the need for minimizing the importance of numbers and tests, because I am a perfect example of someone who ended up doing quite well, I think, without having high test scores. So I ended up graduating from Aurora University and then started my job as a school social worker in West Chicago and did that for 10 years. Left West Chicago, and when I left West Chicago, I went to go work for the Special Education Cooperative across DuPage County. So you have to think, my only experience in terms of elementary education had, up until then, was only West Chicago District 33, because I went to school there and then I worked there for 10 years. So really my bubble was pretty small in terms of the knowledge of what was out in elementary education. So when I left, it was to do this job as a behavior specialist, where I was called into different school districts throughout DuPage County at which point, Sylvia, my eyes were opened.
Oh.
It was amazing to see the difference between the haves and the have-nots. It really was quite eye-opening in regards to walking into a school that is severely underfunded versus walking into a school that is fully funded or overfunded. Those years of doing that work were just pretty shocking in seeing what the students of West Chicago and the teachers and the faculty of West Chicago had to do so much with so little, right? And I think that kind of started my journey of kind of thinking of maybe one day running for office. So I ran to be a school board member. Of course, when I was working in West Chicago, I was unable to be a school board member in the district because it would be a conflict. So when I left, I did run for school board. I got elected and still is one of probably my favorite elected office was being a school board member. The direct impact you have on children's everyday lives is there at the school district, school board level. So I always encourage people, if someone is thinking of running for office, school board is where it's at. So was there on the school board, and then I would say, I think 5 years after I left West Chicago as a social worker is when I ran for state representative, was there for a term, and then ran for state senate, and that leads us to where I'm at right now.
So I would guess that I was going to ask you what drew you to politics, but it sounds like your experience with social work and school definitely had a lot to do with it.
Absolutely, and it really just there was a time in Illinois where we had a governor who was not passing a budget, and he didn't pass a budget for 3 years, and I had never been involved in politics aside from being on the school board. I had never been like, oh, I'm heavily involved and following everything that's happening. That really wasn't me. To me, it was like I go to school. I go to work. Every day. I work with my students. I work with the teachers. I work with the families, and that was my contribution, right, to society at large. I guess was me being the best school social worker that I could be. But during those 3 years, slowly I started to see the direct impact on the families that I worked with. Whether it was accessing mental health services, whether it was the cost of living, or just everyday things that families should be able to access and were unable to do so. Even the schools, the cuts that had to happen because the school districts were fearful of not having enough money to pay for their employees. It really was detrimental, and it was worse than I had ever seen in 15 years of my profession. And I finally got to a point where I said, I really need to stop complaining about this, and I want to be part of the solution. And so it really was the stories of my students and families that pushed me into running for office. They really were the catalyst for my decision to run.
Okay, then I don't know if you wanted to add anything else about what it's like growing up in the Midwest and having immigrant parents, if that affected you, or you think it made it better. Like for me, I felt like it gave me an advantage. Like I have this thing in me from my parents that the proud, and I try to explain this to people, I don't have a word for it. It's almost like the proudness, or you want to do better because they sacrificed,
Absolutely. The stories that I heard from my parents from the time I was a child regarding their childhood, regarding what they went through, regarding what life was like when they first got to this country. All all of these stories, my mom tells of the story that before she was allowed to purchase, before her parents were allowed to purchase a house here in West Chicago, they had to go around and ask the neighbors if it would be okay for a Mexican family to purchase a house. And that's just down the street from my house where I currently live. And it's just insane to me that families had to go through things like that. And the immigrant experience, I think, has been very different because, so my mom came to this country under the Bracero program with my grandfather to work at the Campbell Soup mushroom farm in West Chicago. And my father came to the country undocumented, but was able to fix his papers through the amnesty. And since then to now, immigrants have been living in this country in the shadows because there has been no amnesty. There has been no legal path to citizenship. Quite frankly, it's been we've been regressing in terms of how we help the immigrant community be established. I know people that I went to high school with. I know people who have been here for so many years who are living in the shadows because they're undocumented. And I think that is just a travesty that the federal government has not been able to find a way to do comprehensive immigration reform. And that kind of circles back to the idea of growing up Latina in the Midwest. This topic of conversation has been a topic of conversation in my heart, in my family, in my circle of friends, since I was young, since I was a child. This topic has been, I've always known that this was a problem. I've always known people who were undocumented. I've always heard their experience. When I would go back and forth to Mexico in the summer, I knew that was a privilege. I knew it was a privilege to be able to do that because I knew that folks who were undocumented couldn't do that. Folks who I knew, their parents died or their grandparents died or their aunts or uncles or brothers or sisters would die in Mexico, and they were unable to go and be at their bedside because they couldn't leave the country. And the fact that we live in Illinois is a blessing for so many, because outside of Illinois in the Midwest, you have policies, state level policies, by which people are living in fear and for very real reasons are living in fear. Here in Illinois in the last few years, we have been working hard to make sure that folks who are undocumented, that they know that the state of Illinois is a safe and welcoming place for them to live and prosper. And we have fought and made sure that people know this. We have fought to say that our police will not collaborate with ICE, that is not what our police is here to do. We have said that we are closing any for-profit detention agencies for immigration detention agencies in Illinois. We won't allow that, not on our watch. We have said that our students who are in Illinois can receive scholarships if they're undocumented. We have said that our seniors who are 55 and older can qualify for Medicaid in the state of Illinois. People who we know have been living here 20, 30, 40 years paying taxes and have no access to health care. We saw what happened during the pandemic to our senior population. We saw that our folks who were 55 and older that were still going to working in the manufacturing companies, we saw that they got sick, that their employers didn't take care of them, that they ended up dying, that their family members ended up dying. And we said in Illinois, seniors 55 and older qualify for Medicaid. These are things that we as an Illinois Legislative Latino Caucus are prioritizing, and we are getting the job done.
Okay, so you brought up COVID, so if you don't mind, we can move on to COVID here. Were you affected personally by COVID or your family?
Absolutely. We had friends and family who died. Not only the folks who died, but the impact, the emotional turmoil, the emotional trauma that existed as a result of our community being told, you are an essential worker, you must continue going to work, we need you. And then some of these workers going to places that did not follow the CDC guidelines, that were negligent in their behavior towards their employees. There was a meat packing company that gave their workers feared masks and told them that that is what they needed to protect them from COVID. Feared masks.
No.
That was in St. Charles, Illinois. That was, I mean, our workers, the Latinos, were going to work because they were told you are essential. Many of them undocumented. And we still are unable to pass immigration reform that says you worked during a time in our country that was that people were dying. You went to work, you kept food on our tables, you kept our society going, but we will not do anything to help you in terms of your immigration status. That's what we're doing right now. That is what that federally is what is happening. There is no immigration reform.
It is really tiring. It is it is very frustrating because I have family that's undocumented, and I know a lot of the students I go to school with, and I'm grateful that Illinois allows them to get scholarships and funding, and otherwise they wouldn't. It's hard. I don't see them as undocumented. I hate that word. I hate, most people use illegal, but it's like they're people. We're all people. It's why can't we just have that moral compass that's helping people?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I remember, so when I was in high school, I think it was like maybe in 1995 or 1994, I had to do a project. And the project was, I don't remember exactly what it was, but I think we had to take some sort of, political issue that was happening and defend it or argue it, to pick a side and argue it. And I remember I did Proposition 187. Oh, Proposition 187 in California was saying that if you were undocumented and living in California, you would not be able to access free public education as a child. I remember that time and how I just felt like can I get, I'm in a car and drive to California and do something about this. It was that issue. And I remember my presentation, and I remember someone saying to me, because I got pretty emotional and heated during my presentation. And I remember someone saying to me, and remember, I grew up in a very predominantly Caucasian part of my town. I was in sports that were predominantly Caucasian and activities that were predominantly Caucasian. So people, I think, saw me in a different way. I don't know what that way was, but they saw me in a different way. And I remember it being someone said to me, Karina, and it was they literally raised their hand and they asked the question, well, it doesn't apply to you, Karina, or it wouldn't apply to you, Karina, so why are you getting so upset? And I said to them, how do you know it doesn't apply to me? In other words, How do you know if I'm documented or undocumented? How do you know? You have no idea. You haven't asked me to see I don't have to present papers to walk into the school building. So how do you know if I am or am not able to, if I was in California, how would you know if I was documented or undocumented? If I was able to continue going to school or not continue going to school? And I remember everyone in class just was like, and I didn't answer. I didn't tell, like, you know what I mean? I didn't say, oh, by the way, I was born here. Like, because I'm like, no, you don't need to know that. You don't need to know that about me, because that is a privilege that I know that I have over my peers that are sitting in this classroom. I know that I have this privilege over my peers. And that's just because of where I was born. So it has been, that is like the one issue that I have always just been, I got fired up over, and it's time. It's time. Immigration reform. It's time. It's beyond time. It's overtime. I don't know what you want to call it, Sylvia, but hopefully, in 5 years, if someone listens to this interview, they'll be like, oh yeah, that's such old news. We already took care of that. That's my prayer.
I hope so too. I really, really hope so. But I'm honestly sick of getting my hopes out a little bit, but I feel like something needs to happen. I mean, like, I don't know. How long are we going to wait? And we're needing these people at this point to work. I mean, what are we going to do? Like, it's just frustrating. It is so frustrating. I get what you're saying. Like, everything you said, I completely agree with. When Proposition 187 came out, too, I was telling my mom, we need to get in the car and go to California, like, right now. And she's like, what? I'm like, look at all these people protesting. Let's do something. And it did make an impact. I mean, not a huge one, but obviously, I think people got the message. But again, we went back into the shadows, I feel like. And then we're forgotten. We're invisible again. So... okay, another subject. Maybe we can talk about this all day. But I know that, like, I read up on some of your vaccine clinics that you're holding. If you don't mind asking, are you vaccinated?
Yes, and boosted.
And I noticed the vaccines that you're having, unfortunately, in my area, they're not doing that. And I hate to tell you, it was really hard to get my kids vaccinated. And I didn't understand why it was so hard. It was really easy for me, but it was very hard for them. I had to take them to 3 different places to get vaccinated. Just to find an appointment to get the right shot, and it was very, very frustrating. So when I saw that you were doing the clinics, I was like, why are they not doing it in my county?
So I will tell you what happened with that. So I have over 350 manufacturers in my district, okay? That is the most amount of manufacturers in one state senate district. In Illinois. So what does that mean? That means that during the pandemic, before the vaccine, okay, before testing, before the vaccine, we had people going to work. Again, we talked about this, essential workers that had to go to work. And we got call after call after call after call after call. We had people calling us nonstop. We had people who were working at the factories, people who were the children of the workers. We had the neighbors of the workers. We had the teachers of the kids whose parents worked at the factories saying, Karina, we need your help. Karina, what are you doing to help these people? Like, Karina, this is terrible. We took call after call after call after call, and we reported these situations to OSHA, to the Attorney General's office, to the local health department, to the governor's office. We made these calls. It was a daily fight to bring a voice to these workers and to make sure that they were protected. Now, let me tell you, there were some factories that did exactly what was right. There were some factories that took it seriously. There were some factories who were working so hard to keep their workers safe, right? But there was also so many who didn't. And when we got the vaccine, when we found out that there was a vaccine, I saw immediate access to people who had been staying at home. I saw immediate access to people who lived in communities where the COVID numbers and the COVID deaths were not through the roof. That, what I mean is, we knew by then the data. The data showed that Latino and Black families were the families who were impacted the most by COVID. We knew that the seniors were impacted the most. We knew this. We knew this. So in my opinion, what do? You take the vaccine to the communities that need it the most. And you vaccinate the people who need it the most, the people who were dying, the people who were getting impacted the most. So I waited and I watched to see what the local health departments were doing. And I was screaming at the top of my lungs, like, we need the vaccine here because this is, according to the data, this is where we need the vaccines. So can we get the vaccines here? How can we get the vaccines here? When are we going to get vaccine clinics here? Why don't we have vaccine clinics yet? So then I got tired of asking and decided to start calling around. I'm like, let me just call around. I'm just going to pick up the phone and I'm going to call random local pharmacies and I'm going to ask them if we can do vaccine clinics. So that's what I did. I just picked up the phone. I'm like, can I talk to your manager? Can I talk to their manager? Can I please get in touch with someone? Like, I need to talk to someone about vaccines. I'm the state senator. Can I please talk to someone? I got in touch with the most amazing people at Jewel Osco, who put me in touch with other people. And they were like, Karina, we'll do it. Like, you want to host a vaccine clinic? Sure, let's do it. I'm like, you're serious? Like, yeah, how many vaccines do you want? When do you want to do it? Let's do it. I'm like, okay, let's do it. So that's literally how this happened. It was me picking up the phone, calling people, finally getting this connection, and then spreading the word, partnering with our local high school who hosted a vaccine clinic, partnering with the city of West Chicago, partnering with Representative Maura Hirschauer, contacting a few of the big employers within the district, the factories that had so many employers there, asking them, like, would you be willing to have a vaccine event at the factory? Because people don't have time to be going around and looking for somewhere to get vaccinated. And if you offer it at work and you let them do it while they're working, then maybe we'll have a good turnout. And we sure did. We sure did have a good turnout. And so it was this just groundswell movement and this effort of, I'm not going to sit back and take no for an answer. I'm not going to keep waiting to see when people decide to come and vaccinate this community that has been so impacted. I'm just going to do it myself. I'm not doing it myself, right? It wasn't myself. It was with a group of people, right? Community leaders and with Jewel Osco, who they'll forever be my favorite grocery store because of what they did for our community. It's just so unreal how amazing it was to partner with them and to bring so many vaccines. And of course, the VNA, the Visiting Nurses Association, they also came to the rescue. They were, in fact, I think they were the first to set up a vaccine clinic in West Chicago. It was by appointment only. It wasn't like a MaxVax site, but they did come into West Chicago because I called them. I was like, who do I know? Who can we call? And when I called VNA, they're like, Karina, we will be there. We will be there. When do you want us there? Let's do it. Let's partner. Let's set this up. And VNA came and they put a mobile right in the parking lot of one of our local churches, St. Andrew's, and that is just why didn't other communities get it? I can't answer that. I can only answer how West Chicago was able to get the vaccines that they got.
And I don't know if I'm allowed to ask a question I didn't put on a list, but it was something that kind of happened recently that they lifted the governor's mandate for masks in schools. I don't know if you.
So on Friday there was that judgment that happened. So what happened was only the people that only impacted the school districts that were named on the lawsuit. But then immediately, Attorney General Kwame Raoul, filed. The terminology is going to elude me here, but currently, the kids still have to follow the mandate. So even though there was a judgment, I think the Attorney General did something else, and I'm pretty sure they still have to follow the rules. Now, the reason I know U46 is one of the school districts in my area, and the superintendent put out a statement to this effect, like, yes, we were named, yes, this happened, but kids still have to come to school and wear masks. I think there's still, even though there was a judgment, there's still other things going on there. So, and it really only impacts the schools that were named. So we'll see what happens next.
Okay. I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to add about COVID or the significant impact in the Latino community or your community, or anything else about boosters, vaccinations, or.
Yeah, I think that the groundswell movement of community leaders making sure to say to people, get vaccinated, it's critical, it's important, it saves lives. And then bringing the vaccine to the local community. I think all of those things together, along with the schools are so critical. They were so critical during all of this, and our high school actually shut down for a day to vaccinate. We did a vaccination for teacher event, and then once the students were able to get vaccinated, they did a vaccine event during the school day to get the kids vaccinated. I mean, schools were just such a critical partner in all of this. But aside from the vaccine and getting boosted, small businesses really struggled. And I know that as Latinos, we are entrepreneurs. We have an entrepreneur spirit, whether it's like, let me, bake cakes and sell them on the weekends, or
Tamales.
Make some tacos for some extra money, or I'm really good at making, I don't know, whatever it is, so I'll just sell it for parties when I can to make some extra cash. We have so many entrepreneurs who were so severely impacted during COVID. Bringing resources to these groups of people was top priority for me during COVID. I actually had the director of the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity came out 2 or 3 times to personally go with me to the small businesses in West Chicago to ask them to please fill out these grant opportunities. And, filling the paperwork out is pretty tough. It's not easy, and it's a difficult and complicated process. So moving forward, it's one of the things that I will continue to fight for, is bringing these types of services to our small businesses. I don't mean, the 1,000 employee company. I mean the mom and pop shops that keep our communities going, right? It's the local hair salon, the local nail shop, it's the local coffee shop. Those are the places who were just so severely impacted during COVID times, and it's another area that I really was invested in working to making sure they were able to access some of these resources.
Okay, that's actually all my questions. So I didn't know if you wanted to add anything or throw anything at the end. I don't even know what time it is. I don't have a clock going.
No, that is it. Well, I really have enjoyed connecting with you again. When are you done with school?
I'm gonna get my MA hopefully December of 2023. So after that, I work on my internship this summer. I'm really excited. So it's all new, but even just graduating, I can't believe I graduated. It's my BA. Like even that was new. Now I'm in graduate school. So I'm really
That's
excited.
so amazing. Congratulations. And thank you so much for thinking of me for this project.
I actually thought it was going to be a long shot. I didn't think you would say yes. I was like, she wanted us to do 3 people. So I like interviewed my parents. I'm like, I don't really know anybody else. I wanted to like tell kind of my story because my parents had different stories on how they got over here. And I wanted to do a child of immigrants. You know, like I asked all my friends and they're all like, yeah, well, maybe we'll hook up. And I'm like, they're not really serious about it, you know? So I just reached out to you and they said yes. And I was like, yes. So I really appreciate
it. Thank you so much. That means so much. Thank you, Sylvia.
I told my professor, even she was like, oh my God, like this is awesome for the collection. Like, I can't believe you did this. I'm like, I can't believe it either. So thank you so much for doing this.
Absolutely, and I'll tell Kate thank you as well for scheduling it for us.
Okay, no.
Yeah. So keep us in mind. Let us know what your journey brings. Keep us posted on anything you do in the future. We always love keeping in touch with constituents. So thank you so much, and have a good rest of the week.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.